Hi guys, my third one would be girl murdered by her mustard butter while home alone.
Home is supposed to be the safest place on earth. It is the only place where you can let your guard down, away from all the dangers of the world. But this is not always the case. When a family in California left their little girl at home with her elder brother, they never imagined that she would be harmed in the most brutal way. Let's dive in. Layla Fowler lived in Valley Springs, California,
She's
with
a
her
cute
dad,
girl.
Barney Fowler, stepmom, Krista Walters, and many brothers and sisters. On April 27, 2013, 8-year-old Layla was left under the care of her older brother, Isaiah, while the rest of the family went to watch a Little League baseball game. At around noon, California police received a call from a distressed woman claiming there was an intruder in her house and that her stepson and daughter were home alone.
My children are home alone, and a man just ran out of my house. My older son was in the bathroom, and my daughter started screaming. Okay. He came out, there was a man inside of my house. I need an officer there.
This call came from Crystal Walters. She told the dispatcher that her daughter was okay, but really freaking out. She said that she and her husband were on their way home. As officers rushed to the scene, the dispatcher called Isaiah to check how he and his sister were doing. A distraught Isaiah said that he was in the bathroom when he heard a door slam. He then heard someone yelling and banging the bathroom door. When he came out of the bathroom, he saw a Mexican man running through the back door. The man was tall and had long gray hair. When the dispatcher asked him about his sister, he said that the man stabbed her a bunch of times and that she's probably dead. Barney and Crystal came home before the officers. They found Isaiah sitting in the living room with a phone in one hand and a baseball bat in the other. Layla was lying on the floor in her bedroom, unconscious. Barney got closer and saw that she had a bloody cut on her forehead and blood on her shirt. When he lifted her shirt, he saw numerous wounds dotted across her chest. Blood was seeping out from the cuts. Barney picked up his little girl and he could feel her slipping away from him as she carried her out the front door.
I went in and carried my daughter's body out, couldn't take her to the hospital because I felt she's still alive.
Layla was later pronounced dead at the hospital. The autopsy showed that she had been stabbed more than 70 times in the chest. Her family was totally heartbroken. Who could do such a horrible thing to an innocent girl? The brutal incident shocked the tight-knit community of Valley Springs. They no longer felt safe in their own homes. This was supposed to be a safe community without all the big city crime. Parents were now afraid to let their little ones out to play. Meanwhile, authorities talked to all the residents to see if anyone had noticed anything suspicious on that day. A neighbor from across the street said he didn't see anyone coming out of the house.
Nobody came out that door, plain and simple. I got a German wolf, 95 pounds. Every time somebody walks down that street, they start barking. When this all happened, there was no barks.
But one neighbor said she saw a man running out of the Fowler's house. She gave a similar description to the one Isaiah had given the officers. Investigators conducted a door-to-door sweep of houses, storage sheds, and horse stables. They even brought in divers to search 2 reservoirs for clues. They also blocked all the roads coming in and out of the neighborhood. Residents had to show their IDs before being allowed to pass. Registered offenders in the area were questioned and ruled out as suspects. For days, the Caldera County Sheriff's Office poured all their time and resources on this case, hoping to provide answers to the family and the community. But every lead came to a dead end. The house showed no sign of a break-in or a robbery. There was nothing to go on except for the word of a 12-year-old boy and a neighbor. No one else in the neighborhood had seen the strange man that the 2 were describing. This neighbor later changed her story, saying that she didn't see anyone.
Meaning the witness recanted her previous statements and her identification of the man she saw running away. She also refused to provide a description to the sketch artist so that a composite could be completed.
Investigation collected several knives in the house to see if any of them was used in the crime. Meanwhile, a vigil was held for Layla at Jenny Lund School and was attended by hundreds of people. Some of Layla's former classmates wrote notes to her and hanged them at the fence outside the school. One note read, "Dear Layla, you were a fun person and very smart. I enjoyed being around you every minute." Layla's family had on white t-shirts with photos of Layla's smiling face plastered in front. Isaiah was especially devastated and hung on to his dad's arms. He said that he was not saying goodbye to Layla, but rather, "See you later." Up to this point, Investigators had not considered Isaiah as a suspect, but they continued to talk to him as a witness. They interviewed Isaiah several times to try to get more information on what happened that day, but the more he repeated, the more it sounded weird. There were also some inconsistencies in his story. In his first statement, Isaiah said that the man was yelling and banging the bathroom door, but later he said that he just heard yelling, and the man said, "Hey, I know you're in here, come out," and then he heard Layla screaming. He said that he opened the door to the bathroom to see the man running away, and that he followed him to the door, but then realized that his sister might need help. He stopped, turned around, and ran towards his sister's room, grabbing a knife from the kitchen counter, just in case there's anyone else. When he reached the bedroom, he saw his sister lying on the floor, her shirt covered in blood. According to him, he dropped the knife and then picked it up before returning to the kitchen and calling Crystal. These are details that he had not provided before, and the officers found it rather suspicious. In another interview, he said that he did not enter Layla's room, but rather stood at the door. But on the day of the incident, the officers had seen some blood on Isaiah's forearm. So how did he get the blood if he never went anywhere near his sister? That and the fact that they found a blood-stained shirt in Isaiah's room made detectives believe that Isaiah could have harmed Layla and then lied about the intruder. Furthermore, a steak knife, which investigators believed to be the used weapon, had been thoroughly washed, though there were traces of human blood. If the evidence happened as Isaiah claimed, why did the intruder wash the knife and return it to the drawer? Though he maintained that he was innocent and stuck to his story of the intruder, Isaiah was arrested and charged with second-degree homicide. Everyone was shocked by this turn of events. How can a 12-year-old boy be capable of such a horrifying crime? They had seen Isaiah grow up, and he never showed any signs that he could cause concern. What would make him turn on his sister like that? He always seemed to get along with Layla. Isaiah's parents were also horrified by the arrest. They didn't believe that their son was capable of hurting his sister.
If I turn my back on him right now and he's innocent, how much more would that hurt him? Right or wrong, I've always stood by my children.
During the trial, the prosecutor said that Isaiah had stabbed his sister, then cleaned himself up before calling for help almost an hour later. She said Isaiah was unusually calm when talking to the police dispatcher, and that he waited 1.5 minutes to report that his sister was hurt. The most distressing part of the trial came when photos of Layla's remains were displayed for everyone to see. A pathologist testified that most injuries were small poking wounds, and it was as if someone was trying to intimidate her before finally finishing her off. If an intruder had broken in and brutally hurt Layla in the small amount of time that Isaiah described, it was doubtful that he would have inflicted such injuries. A forensics investigator also testified that they found traces of blood at the kitchen sink and the door connecting the kitchen to the garage. He also said that the bedroom was much cleaner than the rest of the house. He stated that Layla was attacked on the top bunk bed, but Layla somehow ended up across the room on the floor. There were no bloody footprints to suggest that she had walked there. So, how did she get there? Investigators believed that someone either carried her or threw her from the bed. The prosecution ended their case by saying there's no evidence to support Isaiah's story. The defense, however, argued the investigators did a shoddy job with collecting evidence and that they were in a hurry to arrest Isaiah. He said that Isaiah never changed his description of the intruder and that he was hysterical and crying while on the 911 call. He added that Isaiah had maintained his innocence even when he had got a lot to gain when they offered him a plea deal. He argued that the prosecution failed to show a motive of the slaying, saying that it was unlikely that a boy his age would know how to clean up a crime scene so well. In the end, in October 2015, Isaiah was found guilty and sentenced to 6 years to life as a juvenile offender, which means that he would be staying in juvie until the age of 25. While giving the ruling, the judge said that Isaiah's statements didn't make sense to the court. The Fowler family was outraged. Barney stormed out of court while other family members shouted in disapproval. They later said they were disappointed with the county because they believed the killer was still out there. They pushed for an appeal, saying that Isaiah was wrongly convicted, and in February 2018, the conviction was overturned and Isaiah was given a new trial. But unfortunately for them, Isaiah was found guilty in the new hearing and resentenced to stay in juvie until he was 25. So instead of getting his prison time reduced, he got more time. This is a very case, especially since the family lost both a son and daughter. However, it is still interesting to note that while Isaiah was convicted for the crime, some stuff about the case doesn't add up. For example, why did the cops find Isaiah's bloody clothes even after searching the house and its surroundings? How can a boy his age know how to clean a crime scene so well? Isaiah took a lie detector test and passed with flying colors. While these may not always be accurate, some experts looked at his test and agreed that the possibility of him lying was 2 out of 1,000. This means that Isaiah must have to be a very good liar. then there was this male hair that was found on Layla's underwear. It didn't belong to any of Layla's family members or the police. So how did it get there? Who does it belong to? While Isaiah is now serving time for his sister's death, I can't help but wonder, did he do it? Nonetheless, Layla was a sweet and cheerful girl who had her whole life ahead of her. She didn't deserve such a cruel and brutal end. Rest in peace, Layla Fowler. That's the end of our video today. What do you think about this case? What happened?
Alright guys, I will see you in my fourth one, so I'll see you then.